This Castrol livery Jaguar XJR-9 chassis number 388 is unquestionably one of the finest looking racing cars of its era. It weighed under 900 kilograms and had over 700 horsepower. We're going to drive it and then discuss its fascinating history. And yes, it's been raining hard, and no, traction control hadn't been invented in 1988. This car will be auctioned by RM in the new year.
I'm about to invoke the spirit of Wallace, Nielsen and Brundle in this magnificent Jaguar racing car. Good Lord, I'm happy. It's raining, I can't really drive it that fast, but I just don't care, because I'm sitting where they were once sweating. Ha. So, what have we got? 6 litres, 700 horsepower, normally aspirated V12. And a lovely gearbox. Got to take it a bit easy in this weather. The place is just redolent of those races. Ooh. Okay, it has got ample power, to say the least. Druid, would you believe it, is a little heel and toe and then back down to first, like that. Front axles giving me some feedback, not an awful lot. Steering much lighter than I'd expected. Really, really lovely thing. Into Graham Hill. Not getting much push. Second gear, open it up a bit. Third, gearing's absurdly long for round here. There's water spitting out of the louvres ahead of me. Oh, this was the era of sports car racing, wasn't it? We'll never see its like again, I don't think. Stunning machines. And the noise. How very British to go endurance racing with a great big V12. Oh. Feels very, very stiff down the straight there. Into paddock, I'm taking it very easy, but oh my Lord, it's gorgeous. I just want to drive it in the dry and fast. Traction's pretty good. The engine is just a colossus. It's so tractable. The gearbox, you can probably see, I've only driven it 3 laps and already I'm comfortable with the transmission. Oh yes! Oh, I want to spend some more time in this. Sadly, I don't have the bunks to afford it though, but it's the approachability and the ease of use. I expected it to be spiteful and horrible, and it's just not. It's gorgeous. Wow, wow, wow. Yes, what a thing. Watch me get out with no dignity. That was eye-opening. And when you've just jumped out of something like that, you kind of need to speak to someone that can clear your mind. Who better than Andy Wallace, bloke that won at Daytona in this very chassis. Let me get my lid off, if I ever can. Andy, talk me through why this thing is the way it is, and first of all, why I have to be quite careful in the wet. There's a couple of things about this car that mean that in those conditions, you don't want to let it step out, right?
Well, the thing you have to remember is this car is pretty much all engine with a bit of car bolted to it. When you lift the engine cover off, you see just how enormous that V12 is. So you've got that, it's behind your head, that pendulum effect is really strong. Also with 12 cylinders, there's a lot of compression. So if you back out of it because you've got a bit sideways, it doesn't actually do any favours.
When it was starting up earlier and warming up, I was out the back with you and I said to you, do you look at this and view it as some old snotter that you once raced and therefore it's a time gone by, or do you look at it and think, pretty cool, and you kind of nodded sagely to yourself and went, look at it, it's pretty cool?
No, I mean, look, it really is cool, isn't it? I mean, these things are fantastic. What I remember was in 90 when we won Daytona in this car, it wasn't a new car. It'd already done Daytona, I think, in 2 previous years. But we arrived at the track before the first day of practice and looked at the cars, and the guys had done such a fantastic job. Everything on the car looked absolutely brand spanking new and clean and sparkling, but they were 2-3-year-old cars.
And I think one point you made, which was very interesting, is that this back end Group C IMSA era
everyone was doing something different, and if you're doing something different, pretty cool to turn up with a massive V12, yeah?
Well, it's fantastic. As you say, they all sounded different, they all looked different, they were all very, very different to drive, and they're all quick in different places on the circuit. So I think the racing was really interesting. Also, in those days, the closing speed on the straight, the difference in speed between the classes was very high. So you could pass somebody at maybe 40, 50 miles an hour, which of course you don't do now. The other thing was the drivers of the slower cars realised they were second-class citizens in those days, whereas now they're all empowered, and so you have all this contact going on. If you're in a slow car, and a really good friend of mine who I drove with many times, Butch Leisinger, was driving a small GTU car when we won Daytona in '90, and he used to just cower at the bottom of the banking and hide when he heard the Jaguar come in, which was exactly the thing he should have done. But people don't do that these days. So you felt great driving this. You were doing 200 miles an hour on the banking. There were a lot of cars, but you're just whizzing past them. It was brilliant.
An Englishman winning in an English car one of the greatest endurance races out there. I mean, come on, you pinch yourself, don't you?
No, it was fantastic. It really, really was something. And something you have to remember about Le Mans versus Daytona. Of course, Le Mans is the big race. It's the one everybody wants to win. But Daytona is very, very physically difficult. It's difficult for the driver. It's difficult for the car. It's almost 13 hours of darkness. There's no floodlights. It was very, very dark. It's bumpy. It's on the banking. 55 starters on only a 3.5 mile track. So it's really, everything's getting pulverised. And on top of that, as you start the race around 3, 4 in the afternoon maybe, it goes into darkness. It's not unusual to be close to 0 C in January, February in Florida at night, but the next day the sun comes up and it gets really, really hot. Not unusual to be 30 C. So you think you're okay, you've done most of the race, the sun comes up, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and you melt. And you're in sight of the flag, but you're not there yet. You've still got a few more hours to go, and it's killer. It can be.
I've just done 3 laps in the wet at pretty much running speed, okay, but I automatically, and you get this in some cars, there was a great feeling of mechanical strength in the car. Did it feel like a tank to you? Did it feel like something that would just keep going?
Well, I mean, its speciality, especially the V12 cars, the speciality was the long distance ability. As long as you didn't over-rev on the downshifts, because there is a possibility of breaking a valve spring, if you kept the downshift revs level, it would just go and go and go. Fantastic car, really, really strong.
So that's how it drove in period, but allow myself and RM's Max Girardo to explore a little more about the history of this particular car. Max, we're here at Brands Hatch. It looks lovely and dry and accommodating, but it's been a pretty foul day. But we have with us what has to be the best looking Group C car in that livery?
Not only the best looking Group C car, I think the best sounding Group C car as well. That's the important bit, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely staggering. Talking to Andy Wallace earlier about the fascination of Group C, which will remain the sports car era of choice for anyone, I think. He was quite right to point out that there was such variety. Turbocharged engines normally aspirated, but a normally aspirated V12, they got to 7.4 litres, I'm told, but this is just a baby at 6 litres, 700 horsepower. You've driven it too. I mean, it's sensational noise, isn't it?
It's just when you fire it up, you know, it's just, I don't, the hair, well, you don't have much hair on your head, but the hairs were standing on top of my head, that's for sure. It's just, it gives you real emotion, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a special thing. But I'm staggered at how approachable it is. So you get in the car, strap yourself in, you can see on the video, it's quite compact in there, but a very approachable space. You've got a really good view out, the scuttle's not too high. You don't feel like you're too cocooned, but you feel nice and cozy, which is a good thing. Nudge 3 toggles to your right, hit the bottom toggle with a little bit of throttle, start it up, select first, and go. It is that simple.
It really is that simple. I mean, I'd never sat in it before, and it literally just pulled out the pits, and off you are on the circuit. I couldn't quite believe how simple it is.
And I suspect that you could start it in the first 3 gears, couldn't you? Just pull the clutch out. It's got so much torque, it just goes.
So much torque, so much torque. You actually almost don't need to change gear. If you're feeling lazy, you can just keep on going around without changing gear. There is that much torque. But that gear shift as well, isn't it just fantastic when you're going through the gears? So short and precise. Oh, great.
I often think when I drive a modern street car that has a manual gear shift, there's not many left obviously, that when they try and define the feel of a gear shift in a sports car, that's probably the approximation of what they want. On a you know, quite a simple linkage, but with a very direct feel. And as you get confident with it, you can just whip it through, can't you? It's just it's a snick of the wrist and it goes.
Bang, 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 bang. Instant. It's like lightning quick, I think.
Let's come back to your space then. So the person that's going to doff their cap, raise their hand at you to potentially buy this, what are they going to do with it? I've now got a new idea having driven it.
Well, not everyone is going to want to race it. The great thing about this car, it's historically very important. It is the Daytona winner for Jaguar. This car came first overall. So it's a collector's item because historically it's very important. It's a very important Jaguar in this era of racing. But also, as we've both witnessed today, you can also get in, drive it, go racing. Group C racing. It's relatively easy. So actually, it appeals to a collector. It can also appeal to a racer. I think it's just a piece of art as well. I mean, I'd be quite happy to buy it, not drive it, and have it in my garage. Well, I'd like to drive it, but have it in my garage and just look at it as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how beautiful it is in the flesh, actually. It looks great in photographs. The wheel spats at the rear, can we say what they were called in period by Wallace? Are we allowed to say that on camera?
I'll let you say that.
They were known as PFs. I can look at the camera. They were known as PFs in period, which stands for piss flaps. Without them, the car has an uncommon beauty to me. It looks great in photographs, but in the raw, it shortens the wheelbase almost, and the whole car seems truncated, and the rear overhang disappears, and it just looks stunning.
Did you notice that it's almost the odd shape of the wheel arch as well? It's not just perfectly round. It's it's functional, isn't it?
The history of the vehicle is absolutely unparalleled. So there were only 2 Castrol V12 Jaguars of this type. This one has 1 Daytona. It's come second at Sebring, and it's chassis raced for 3 years. It's done everything.
This one came first at Daytona, and it came second at Daytona. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's got everything, and it's got a bit of service history. You know when you buy a car and you say, "Can I see the service history?" and there's some geek has kind of put some bits of paper, each service interval into a bit of film and then just filed it together. Let me just show you how that person can now feel quite inadequate. Okay, that is what you call a history, and it's documented. There are documents in there that show the engine stripped down photographs post Daytona with bore wear and piston wear and Lord knows what else. It's unparalleled. It's absolutely outrageous. So the car comes with a beautiful narrative as well.
We've known where it's been every single day of its life. It's never disappeared. It's known ownership. For us in the collector car world, you'd love to know where a car has been every single day in its life. I know every owner. I know when it was sold, who bought it, where it went, what they did with it, who restored it. It's fantastic.
I'm completely smitten. Now I've driven it, the driving impressions. I think there's a few things that I touch on in the cabin as well. It's such a functional thing. I think the modern endurance racing car feels so far removed. It looks like a fighter jet inside. You don't really know what's going on. You look at the steering wheel of a Porsche 919 and you go, is that actually a steering wheel? This, you get in it, you've got an analog gauge in front of you for the rev counter, you've got a lovely round steering wheel that looks like a steering wheel. All the toggles are obviously big and bulky so that your gloves can find them at night and when it's wet. It's just a functional place to sit, isn't it?
There's gear shift knob. Isn't that great to actually change gears yourself instead of using those flappy pedals that they all use? And don't you find that you strap in the car and you are one and only, you're with the car, you're parts of the car. It's not electronics, it's you and the car, and every input that you put into that car, it's directly affects where it's going, when it's steering in. There's none of this, no flashing lights and all that malarkey.
It is just stunning. So I think we probably, before we start to get too gushing, we ought to wrap it there. An unparalleled piece of Jaguar history that comes with documentation that will probably allow you to read for 3 years non-stop. And of course, it's just plain beautiful.